Let's go to Bill Burr. Bill Burr had an interesting take. Hey, what's going on here, guys? Let me see something. Hold on. For whatever reason, they said they want Anton on the whole thing, not half the thing. Bill Burr had an interesting take on why he thought that Luigi executed, and this is what he had to say, and this is CNN's reaction to it.
I was sitting there reading an article, guy. They go, "Oh my God, he's such a great guy. He had a wife and kids, and he's such a great guy." And then you find out he and the other guys he's working for are getting sued for $121 million for dumping a stock and not letting the other people know. It's like, there's your motive. What is more heartless than a CEO of a corporation? The decision in healthcare, the decisions that they make. This is the thing. I'm not saying what happened should have happened, but I'm just, for them to be like, oh, this is like, why would anybody want to do this? It's like they're denying claims and people are dying.
So this is very common kind of armchair analysis. John, your eyebrow is like up to here. I mean, you can't tell me you haven't heard something like this in the last couple of days.
No, look, I mean, there's plenty of anger and frustration in insurance companies, but do not lionize murderers or elevate psychotic screeds into a manifesto. This is insane. Don't make a folk hero out of this cat. He assassinated a CEO going to a thing, and you got a problem with the way insurance companies do business. There are a lot of righteous ways to handle it within the legal structure.
And I want
but I
anyone
think
else
we're playing a little bit footsie with elevating this cat, and he doesn't deserve it.
Do you think he's being, but he's not being elevated by any particular thing. It's like the general internet. There's no one voice you can point to saying you're the one who's turned him into a hero.
I mean, there's plenty of voices. You can go on the internet right now and find all manner of people who are lionizing this person or fetishizing him sexually or so on and so forth.
But I mean mainstream media. Like, I don't think the mainstream media is doing erotic fanfic.
Mainstream media is not even really a thing anymore. I mean, it's a thing. We don't want to try to act like mainstream media doesn't have an impact. Mainstream media absolutely has an impact. But mainstream media, in a lot of senses, or in a sense, in a lot of ways, is they always play catch up to what's happening in social media. They always the last to the party, and then they just get the visibility behind it because they got the manpower right now. They got the marketing tools. They got the infrastructure currently that gets the word out a little bit faster than everybody else. But are you waiting for mainstream media to catch on before you say that people are fetishizing or they're championing or they're advocating for something in particular? No, you don't wait for mainstream media to make that assessment. So we got to wait for CNN or MSNBC before we actually say that something is a trend or is popping. They usually the ones that then talk about what's happening on social media. They're the last people to find out.
Fiction of this guy. Like, that is the thing that's happening.
Somebody who was trusted by the mainstream media just as soon as a few months ago, Taylor Lorenz was out there saying she felt joy when she heard about this. I mean, I agree with John. I think there's a culture in the United States right now that just doesn't, there's no respect for
there's no respect.
Laws. There's no respect for there's no respect for life. There's no respect for our cultural norms, and people believe that they should be able to take matters into their own hands. It's pretty ugly.
I think it works on always. I think it works on both sides. I think it works in this country in general. You said before we even got into this conversation, the internet is consistent. It's consistent with people who have things to say but really have nothing to say, and their opinions really don't matter. I think something's really interesting about.
What? Let me back up for a minute. What did she say? Carrie champion?
I think it works on both sides. I think it works in this country in general. You said before we even got into this conversation, the internet is consistent. It's consistent with people who have things to say but really have nothing to say, and their opinions really don't matter.
This is the second time that I've seen her on this panel. Second time that I've seen her on this panel be wrong. How can you be any more wrong than you are? The internet literally determined what happened in this past election. Is she crazy? Is she smoking crack? What is wrong with this woman? I honestly think that she's crazy. I think that she's lost her mind. What is she saying? How don't it matter? As a matter of fact, I believe that the internet matters more in some instances. In some instances, not all, but in some instances, I believe that it matters more than real life. Why? Because I think that the internet gives people a cloak that really helps them to be able to share because they think that they're doing it anonymously. They're not. It gives them this cloak that allows for them to feel like they can actually say what they really feel, but they would never do that stuff in real life. When you see people in real life, it's all chill, all hunky-dory. When you see people on the internet, them same people, they telling you what they really think, what they really feel on the inside. Even when it comes to relationships, I've seen women have the highest of standards, and then they be with the dustiest people in the world. I'm telling you, the internet is a real thing. A lot of people don't really understand. First thing I do when I check somebody's resume or when I'm trying to hire somebody is I go straight to their social media because I want to know who you really are and who you really projecting yourself to be. But then I be able to connect between the two. What you selling me versus what I'm actually seeing in real life. Because the presentation layer, when you come into the interview, you on your best behavior. You got your code switch voice on. You pretending like you actually care. These women be taking y'all be taking them on dates, and she's sitting in front of you like, oh my God, I really do care about what you think. Meanwhile, she jumped right back on TikTok right after she get off of that date, and she talking about how she took you out, how you took her out just so she can get some food in a doggy bag.
I think something's really interesting about, not even interesting. Did anybody see that movie, The Rainmaker? Did you guys ever see that movie back in the day, 1997?
These sort of hero lawyer dramas.
John Grisham. Yeah, John Grisham. And it was not necessarily similar to this, but the lawyer was Matt Damon, and he was suing a big insurance company because they kept denying a claim. And in this particular case, the young kid died, and he had cancer, but his mom kept trying to fight the big insurance company, and they won in the end. And I heard you earlier today say, just a moment ago, say, there are ways to go about this. For people who feel frustrated, and I'm not excusing Luigi at all, but I don't know if anyone feels like there are any legal ways to go about it. And I'm still unclear on what his actual motive is. He comes from this wealthy family. He had a back issue. We're hearing all of these different issues, and I'm like, what was he really trying to do and say? Not that we need to try to understand that.
That's my point. Is where
are we at with him? What's going on with him? Who is he really? He's 26 years old. He graduated from an Ivy League college.
Probably was getting, somebody said it yesterday, maybe he was getting kicked off his parents' insurance. Because you know you get kicked off at like 26, right?
His family has money. What exactly was his real motive? And I don't want to make it seem like we are trying to lionize him as a hero.
I think that's kind of what we're walking up towards here, though, right? We're trying to say, what was really the motive behind this? Sometimes it's just, crazy as crazy does, but with a gun it gets worse.
Who was that? Who was the one in the purple right there with the good posture? Oh, they got Geraldo on there too? All right, let me see what else they got to say.
But I, there are
Geraldo out there.
We got a lot of issues in our country
with the mustache
around corporations that don't seem to care about the little guy. We got a lot of issues with income inequality, but they're not solved by people writing manifestos, using a gun to murder a private citizen. And then all of a sudden people trying to get inside their head and figure out what the noble motive is or what particular thread he's pulling on the Unabomber's manifesto to make a consistent case against capitalism.
There's never an excuse for what he did, period. And I think when you see people online and in the media defending what he did as a result of their sentiment about large corporations, as a result of how they feel about the healthcare industry as a whole, I think that's a major problem. But it's not something that just started today. We've been seeing this go on, I think, for a very, very long time. And it's not the first time, and I'm sure Geraldo can speak to this, looking back to some of the cases from a decade or more ago, when we see people praise murderers, people like Jodi Arias, where they look at these murderers, they create fan clubs for them. And we're starting to see that already with Luigi Mangione being a physically attractive young man, and you see these women on TikTok and other places that are praising him because of what he looks like. And a lot of young women are posting that.
That's reasonable, I think. You want to dig the guy's six-pack, that's fine. But you fall into a trap when you get into the substance of his beef.
That's it.
Now he's succeeded. Now he's pulled us in. Now the focus is not on Luigi, it's on Thompson. It's on the victim and what the victim does and what the victim has done, with the deny and defund.
Do you think they should release his manifesto?
Oh, yeah, I don't mind.
Because some of the other shootings we've had in this country
That's
and
the
other
point.
places,
Yes.
we still don't know anything about the person who shot at Trump. We still don't know much
So why
about the
now?
person who
Yeah.
committed that atrocity at the Christian school in Nashville. There's a lot of shootings.
The Las Vegas mass shooting we know nothing about.
There's a lot of things we are hidden from us. And then this guy, Geraldo, shoots, and we know more in 5 minutes about him than we know about all these other people.
That's
And I
the
wonder
fair
why
point.
that is.
But the manifesto, remember, was released before we had the perpetrator. So you have the manifesto. That's how they got the Unabomber. The brother reads the manifesto, recognizes the
That's a fair
brother's,
point also.
Style of Harvard.
But there's a protocol
and it led to
generally.
his
And
but
John,
he
hold on
arrested-
one second. Let me jump in here. I'm really glad you brought that up because David Kaczynski has been quoted. Someone reached out to him to say, how do you feel
It's a
about
surviving
this
brother,
idea
yeah.
that he's alluding to your late brother's comments? And he basically said, it gives me a great deal of personal pain to think my brother's actions have in any way contributed to influencing a man like this to kill an innocent human being. I bring this up because I can't think of anything with kind of a longer legacy and tail on the dark corners of the internet than the Unabomber's manifesto, which many shooters across various political ideologies have cited or are in that world who still quote from it and still read it.
But no, I mean, there are people who take dark inspiration from Columbine. Look, generally there's a protocol around mass shootings, right? We just call them the shooter. Second of it, we don't publish the manifesto for reasons of elevation. Now, if manifestos are outlined, particularly in some mass shootings where there's something that's already out there, then, you can read it, but you don't elevate it. You don't
But Scott just
dignify
made
it
a
and start
point where he
fetishizing
said,
it.
how come there's ones we don't know? And
Yeah.
you said it with this kind of question mark, right?
I mean,
Well,
usually
there's
it's
things,
whether-
but
usually
no,
when I
things
read
about
it
this
public or not,
story, but
feed
there are
into the
things about
idea.
this story that feel very auspicious, and so people are attracted to it. I'm not saying that it's the media's fault. That's so easy, but everyone started. Oh wait, who was this guy? Is he attractive? He pulled down his mask. Everyone, there were all these little breadcrumbs, and it makes it feel like we're elevating this guy, but we're not.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Listen, if you go and you put in hashtag Luigi Marcion or whatever versus hashtag Brian Thompson, most people don't even know who Brian. If I just went out there and I said, hey man, you heard about Luigi Marcion? In a general sense, they'd be like, oh yeah, I know who that is. That's player number 2, crashed out. Thought he wanted to be Mario, he crashed out, whatever the narrative would be, right? If I say, hey man, you heard about Brian Thompson? Nobody would know who Brian Thompson is. Now, if I said, you heard about the United Healthcare CEO that got killed by that dude named Luigi, it will be a completely different conversation. Why? Because that is what people are attracted to. He is more popular. His hashtag is bigger. In the algorithm, people care more about the killer than they do about the victim. That is a fact. That is just the way that it is. I hate to say it, Carrie, I don't know where she keep getting all of these bad takes from. People care more about the victim, or I'm sorry, the killer than they do about the victim. Nobody remembers any of the victims of any of the people that died from the killers. The killers are the ones that's highlighted. The killer, and this is in history. This is not just this situation. This is historically. People care more about the killers than they do about the victim. Nobody cares about the victims. Everybody cares about the killer. They're more interested in the killer. They don't study the victim. They don't study how they got killed. They don't celebrate them. They don't highlight them. They don't bring any visibility to them. They don't have a holiday for them. You don't care nothing about that. They care about the person that committed the crime more than they care about the victim. That is absolutely true. And it's no different in this. People have dissected. Nobody is dissecting David. Everything that the Brian Thompson guy was possibly into was cool and it was interesting until we learned more about the killer. I see more women fawning over the six-pack than that beer belly that Brian Thompson had. Maybe if Brian Thompson would have had a six-pack, he would have been more of a person that they would have had an interest in talking about. Nobody cares about Brian Thompson. Nobody cares about his wife. Nobody cares about his kids. Nobody cares about none of that. But we know we know Luigi's classmates. The classmates came up and said, hey man, he valedictorian. This was his grades. This is what he was. His parents was this. He crashed out. He had a six-pack. He went to Hawaii. Real talk. Nobody cares about victims. Nobody cares about victims. Listen, that's why I keep telling y'all to stop running in the victim Olympics. Nobody cares about victims. If you want to be remembered on this earth, if you want anything to happen for you, guess what? The victim Olympics is not the way to go. Nobody cares about the person that is the victim. They only care about the shooter. And that's metaphorically speaking for anything in life. Ain't nobody tripping off you, Clevis. You begging for something? You keep on begging somebody for some, hey, save me all, I'm messed up. Oh, man, nobody care about. Listen, even when it comes to giving, right? Let's say if it's somebody on the street, oh, my God, I'm struggling out here. Ain't nobody tripping off of him. They trying to, the people that get celebrated is the ones that gave to the poor. Yeah, man, I donated to the poor. I'm a pillar in my community. I take care of business. He the one that gets celebrated. He the one that gets celebrated. We are at, yes, Ellisino, you are 100% correct. This is the villain era. This is the villain era. Y'all didn't want to start talking about money until I started talking about how all of the corruption come back to the money. When I was bringing it up, listen, when I was having these conversations, hit a like for the algorithm. Y'all want to be honest or y'all want to be honest? When we was having conversations and I was breaking it down, that's why I had to separate it. You want to get the Stock Club information? Come to Stock Club. You want to figure out where the money is hidden in politics and how Beyonce got $15 million or $2 million or whatever it is that she paid from Kamala Harris's campaign and how they spent $1.5 billion and how they stole some money? Okay, well, we going to make it a little bit more interesting and we going to start to dissect that to figure out who got insider trading and what stocks we need to invest in. Because the villain era is in. It's villain era time. Is villain. When we was breaking it, hey guys, hey, you got to do this. You got to make sure that you do this. Nobody cares about that other stuff. When I got my Apple Watch on, they say, oh, that's good information. Cool. You're such a positive influence. When I take the Apple Watch off and then I put on the Rolex, the rose gold Rolex, the big boy, they like, you know what? I don't like him. I can't turn it off. I want to see him crash out. We in the villain era. We in the villain era. It's not till you put on something that makes somebody feel a little less adequate that they then want to have a conversation about whether or not you are adequate enough to have that conversation with you. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear. Listen, it's the anti-era. This is Rihanna's album era. Anti. One of my favorite albums from an R&B perspective. It's anti-era. Everybody loved Drake until they didn't love Drake no more. Everybody loved Jay until they didn't love Jay no more. Diddy just got the key to the city. Now he got the keys to the cell block. It's the villain era. We don't want heroes no more. No more heroes. No more heroes. They like Deadpool more than they like Superman. We like Deadpool more than we like Superman. The Wolverine movie by itself is not going to do the numbers that the Deadpool movie do. They had to bring Wolverine back into Deadpool in order to reinvigorate the X-Men series. They do. Straight up. I'm being for real. We don't like heroes no more. We like villains. We like Thanos more than we like T'Challa. And the only reason we like T'Challa is because Chadwick Boseman had cancer. That's why the devil is running rampant. That's why the devil is infected. That's why the devil is so popular right now. Everybody anti-Jesus. Oh, Anton is starting to hit a nerve now. Anton is starting to hit a nerve now. Everybody is anti-Jesus right now. You know why? Because it's not the only reason they like him is because he had to die first. When he was rocking out, when he was walking the earth and saving people and healing people, they wanted to hang him. It's scripture. They chose the criminals that was next to him to live than letting him go. We want to see the villain win nowadays. So unless you're going to become some kind of anti-hero, you cooked. You think you're going to come in and save people by doing the right thing? No, they want to see, listen, they don't want to see a dude that come from, I've never heard of this in my entire life, right? I've never heard of this entire life. I see people, for example, I'll give you the narrative. I'll give you the perfect explanation for this. I see people continue to lie, for example, and they say, well, Anton, no matter how much I prove it, you'll have a new set of people that come up and say, Anton must have got lawsuit money. Anton come from a good background. Why would we listen to Anton when he been married for 20 years? I'm sorry, what? Huh? I've been married for 20 years, so you don't want to listen to me on how to have a successful relationship. I need somebody that had been in the streets and suffered. Then you get somebody that's been in the streets, or they marry a single baby mama, and then you say, well, no, he ain't living what he really talk about. Okay, so which one you want? You want the person that's done it successful? I've never been in a situation, let's say hypothetically, I come from an environment where my father actually left me a trust, which he didn't. Ain't that what we want for all of our children? The very thing that I'm trying to do, because the word of God says that is, listen, you need to leave an inheritance for your children. So my goal is to not have my daughter go through the BS that I went through in order to be successful. But we villainized for it. But a dude can go out there and steal your money and you reward him as a result of it. This is honest to God, this is the era that we live in, to where you could be the bad guy for not getting into no crime. It's the craziest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. I would have loved to got an inheritance. I would have loved to had a trust. I would have loved to got some insurance money. It would have made my life so much easier. Then the conversation that we would have been having is how to manage it effectively to grow it even exponentially more once you get the opportunity to do so. Don't nobody want to struggle with you. Ain't nobody trying to be on no struggle bus. I want my daughter to deal with the same BS that we had to deal with. What kind of junk is that? So you want to struggle. Well, you got to get it out the mud. I'm tired of the mud. The mud is dirty. It's tired. We tired, boss. We tired of mud. It's the dumbest thing I ever heard of in my entire life. I don't want to take advice from you because you've been married successfully. Nigga, ain't that what you said that you wanted? What you wanted? Nigga, I've been divorced 30 times?